I'm so glad you found your way here. Your brain is listening right now, even in perfect silence, scanning for sounds that aren't there, creating patterns from nothing. You'll discover why quiet heals more than noise ever could, and understand why silence might be the most powerful medicine your mind has been seeking. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Now settle in. You're in your safe space while your auditory cortex quietly scans the stillness, searching for meaning in the absence of sound. Allow yourself this moment of peace. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about silence's hidden power, from the brain regions that activate when nothing is heard, to neural pathways that heal in quiet, to the truth that emptiness can be the fullest experience of all. This thoughtful journey through silence builds bridges between searching minds. A soft subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more silent seekers to discover and brings us closer to protect this sanctuary, one sleepy soul at a time. Your healing journey inspires ours. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into peaceful fog of approaching sleep. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where thoughts rest safely, in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Silence isn't actually the absence of sound. It's something your brain actively creates and processes. When we say a room is silent, what we're really experiencing is sound below certain thresholds, typically around 30 decibels or less, quieter than a whisper at 10 feet. But even in what seems like perfect quiet, your auditory cortex in the temporal lobe remains remarkably active. Researchers using functional MRI scans discovered in studies as recent as 2025 that during periods of silence, your brain doesn't power down. Instead, it shifts into a different mode of listening. The auditory cortex continues scanning, predicting, and even amplifying internal sounds like your heartbeat or breathing. This active silence processing represents one of the brain's most fascinating paradoxes we hear. Silence, not by detecting nothing, but by noticing the specific absence of expected sounds, creating meaning from emptiness itself. Your ears never truly rest, even when you're asleep in the quietest room. The tiny hair cells in your cochlea, those spiral-shaped structures deep in your inner ear, continue converting mechanical vibrations into electrical signals throughout the night. What changes in silence isn't the ear's activity, but how your brain chooses to process or ignore these signals. When ambient sound drops below certain thresholds, roughly the volume of a whisper at 15 feet away, your brain's filtering systems adjust their sensitivity. The thalamus, acting as a sensory gateway, begins prioritizing different types of information. Instead of focusing outward on environmental threats, your neural networks redirect attention inward. This shift happens automatically within seconds of entering a quiet space, fundamentally altering which brain regions receive resources and which experiences reach your conscious awareness. The default mode network, or DMN, activates most powerfully during silence. This network includes the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus, regions that neuroscientists once called the task-negative network because they seemed to turn off during focused activities. But research from the past 3 years reveals these areas don't shut down. They shift to internal processing. When external noise decreases, the DMN increases its activity by up to 30% within just 2 minutes. This network handles autobiographical memory, future planning, and self-referential thought. In silence, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the essential work of being you. Your brain uses quiet to consolidate memories, process emotions, and construct the continuous narrative of your identity. Work that constant noise interrupts and fragments. Neurologists have discovered that silence triggers measurable changes in brainwave patterns within 90 seconds. Using electroencephalography, EEG, researchers observed participants shifting from beta waves associated with active thinking and alertness to alpha waves when entering quiet environments. Alpha waves, oscillating at 8 to 13 cycles per second, indicate relaxed yet aware mental states. After about 5 minutes of sustained silence, many participants began showing theta wave activity, the same patterns seen in meditation and light sleep. These shifts don't require any special training or meditation practice. Your brain naturally downregulates its arousal systems when given permission through environmental quiet. The anterior cingulate cortex, monitoring for threats and conflicts, reduces its vigilance, allowing other brain regions to emerge into prominence and different types of mental processing to unfold. Sound affects the brain through a pathway most people never consider: the stress response system. When your ears detect noise, signals travel not just to the auditory cortex, but also to the amygdala, those almond-shaped clusters deep in the brain that process emotion and threat, even during sleep. Loud or sudden sounds activate the amygdala, triggering the release of stress hormones. This happens automatically, bypassing conscious awareness. Studies measuring stress markers show that people living in consistently noisy environments have elevated levels even when they report being used to the noise. Silence reverses this process, signaling safety to the amygdala and allowing your endocrine system to return to balanced baseline functioning. One of the most interesting discoveries about silence emerged from research published in May 2025. Just 3 days of intentional quiet can begin rewiring your brain. Participants in silent retreats showed measurable increases in gray matter density in the hippocampus, the region crucial for memory formation. This neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells, was previously thought to require months of meditation practice or intensive cognitive training. But brain scans before and after 72-hour silent periods revealed clear structural changes. The neurons didn't just increase in number, they also formed new connections, creating denser neural networks. For people regularly exposed to noise pollution, these changes were even more pronounced. Your hippocampus doesn't just benefit from silence, it seems to crave it. This seahorse-shaped structure processes about 3 million pieces of sensory information every second you're awake. In noisy environments, much of that processing involves filtering out irrelevant auditory data, leaving fewer resources for the hippocampus's primary jobs, forming memories and spatial navigation. In a 2013 animal study that remains influential, mice given 2 hours of daily silence showed significantly more new neurons in their hippocampi compared to mice exposed to continuous ambient noise. The silent mice also performed better on memory tasks and showed less age-related cognitive decline. While human studies can't measure neurogenesis as directly, brain imaging suggests similar processes occur in people who regularly practice silence or live in quiet environments. Silence activates the parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest response. Within 30 seconds of entering a quiet environment, your vagus nerve, the long, wandering nerve connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive system, begins increasing its activity. Heart rate variability, a measure of the variation in time between heartbeats, improves in silence, indicating better autonomic nervous system balance. Blood pressure drops by an average of 3 to 5 millimeters of mercury. According to studies from 2024, your breathing naturally slows and deepens. Digestive processes normalize. These aren't conscious choices, but automatic responses to the perceived safety that silence signals. Your body interprets quiet as permission to shift from survival mode to restoration mode, initiating repairs that constant alertness prevents. The brain's energy consumption changes in silence. Functional imaging studies show that active, noisy environments require about 20% more glucose metabolism in the auditory and attention networks compared to quiet conditions. This might not sound significant, but your brain uses roughly 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your weight, in silence. That energy redirects to other crucial processes: memory consolidation, cellular repair, waste clearance through the glymphatic system. Researchers measuring cerebral blood flow found that silent rest periods allow certain brain regions to decrease their metabolic rate, essentially taking brief recovery breaks that improve their long-term efficiency, like muscles after exercise. Neural networks benefit from cycles of activity and rest. Recent research on the glymphatic system reveals another reason silence matters for brain health. This network of vessels clears metabolic waste from the brain, flushing out proteins like beta amyloid that accumulate during waking hours and contribute to neurodegenerative diseases. The glymphatic system becomes most active during sleep, but quiet waking periods also enhance its function. Studies using specialized MRI techniques show that during silence, the flow of cerebrospinal fluid through brain tissue increases by up to 60% compared to noisy conditions. This is one reason why silence correlates with reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias in long-term population studies. Your brain literally rinses itself more effectively in quiet, washing away the chemical debris of thought and protecting against age-related decline. So yes, silence is already changing our understanding by showing us that quiet isn't passive or empty. It's an active state where the brain performs essential maintenance, growth, and restoration that noise interrupts. Silence enhances the brain's ability to detect weak signals through a process called stochastic resonance. When background noise is constant, your auditory system habituates, becoming less sensitive to subtle variations. In silence, the absence of competing stimuli allows your brain to lower its detection thresholds, noticing sounds and patterns that would otherwise disappear beneath louder signals. This is why you can hear your own heartbeat in a very quiet room, or why subtle environmental sounds become more noticeable at night. Musicians and sound engineers often use silent intervals to reset their hearing during long sessions. Audiologists recommend periods of quiet for people experiencing hearing fatigue or tinnitus, allowing overworked neural pathways to recover their sensitivity. Cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, responds noticeably to sound and silence. In noisy environments, anything above 60 decibels, roughly the volume of a normal conversation, your adrenal glands continuously release cortisol to maintain alertness. This made evolutionary sense when threats required constant vigilance. But chronic cortisol elevation shrinks the hippocampus, impairs memory formation, and increases inflammation throughout the body and brain. Studies from 2024 measured cortisol levels before and after silence interventions. Participants sitting in quiet spaces for just 10 minutes showed cortisol reductions of 15 to 25%. After 3 days of silence, baseline cortisol normalized even in people with chronically elevated levels. Silence isn't just calming. It's biochemically restorative, literally rebalancing your stress chemistry. The auditory cortex contains specialized neurons that specifically respond to the transition from sound to silence. These offset neurons fire most actively, not during continuous sound or continuous quiet, but at the moment noise stops. Researchers discovered these cells while studying how the brain perceives rhythm and temporal patterns in music. The offset neurons help your brain mark boundaries, creating the perceptual experience of distinct events rather than continuous streams. In silence, these neurons remain alert but quiescent, ready to detect the slightest sound. This explains why sudden noises startle us more in quiet environments. The offset neurons have primed the system for maximum sensitivity, making our startle response faster and stronger when expectations are violated. Silence improves cognitive performance in measurable ways. A 2021 study tested participants on concentration tasks with 3 conditions: silence, speech in the background, or ambient noise. Those working in complete quiet showed 30% better performance, made fewer errors, and reported lower stress levels measured through skin conductance and heart rate monitoring. The effect was most pronounced for complex tasks requiring working memory, holding multiple pieces of information simultaneously. Researchers attributed this to reduced cognitive load when your brain doesn't need to filter out irrelevant auditory information. It has more processing capacity for the task at hand. Even people who claim to work better with background noise showed objective improvements in silence, suggesting our preferences don't always align with our optimal performance conditions. Your emotional regulation systems function more efficiently in quiet environments. The connection between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, crucial for managing emotional responses, shows increased coherence during silence compared to noisy conditions. Brain imaging reveals that when people process emotionally challenging information in silence versus noise, their prefrontal cortex exerts stronger top-down control over the amygdala's reactive responses. This neural pattern correlates with better emotional stability and fewer overreactions to minor stressors. After several days of regular silence practice, participants in meditation retreats showed lasting improvements in this amygdala-prefrontal connection, suggesting that quiet doesn't just provide temporary relief, but actually strengthens the brain's emotional control circuits, creating resilience that persists even after returning to noisy environments. Children's developing brains are particularly vulnerable to noise and particularly responsive to silence. Research from 2024 examining school environments found that students in classrooms with better sound insulation and lower background noise scored 10 to 15% higher on reading comprehension and mathematics tests. The effect was strongest for children under age 10. When the auditory cortex and language centers are still developing their connections, chronic noise exposure during critical development periods can permanently alter how these regions organize themselves. Conversely, children given regular quiet time showed enhanced verbal working memory and better emotional regulation. Their brains needed silence to consolidate learning, process experiences, and develop the neural networks for attention control. Pediatric neurologists now recommend that children have at least 1 hour of quiet time daily for optimal cognitive development. Silence allows the brain to engage in task-free thought, wandering that feels unproductive but serves essential functions. When your mind isn't focused on external demands, it naturally drifts to unresolved problems, future scenarios, and creative connections between distant concepts. This is when sudden insights emerge. The aha moments that arrive when you're not actively seeking them. Neuroscientists using thought sampling techniques found that people generate more creative solutions to problems after periods of silence than after actively working on those problems. The DMN, active during quiet, integrates information from multiple brain regions simultaneously, allowing combinations and patterns that focused thinking, constrained to specific neural pathways, cannot achieve. Silence creates space for the unexpected connections that define creative insight. The experience of silence varies across cultures, but the neurological benefits appear universal. Researchers studying Buddhist monks, Christian contemplatives, and secular meditators found similar brain changes during silent practices despite different philosophical frameworks. All showed increased gray matter in regions associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. Indigenous communities with quiet-centered practices demonstrated lower rates of anxiety and depression compared to their urbanized counterparts, even when controlling for other lifestyle factors. This suggests silence activates fundamental neurological processes that transcend cultural interpretation, whether framed as prayer, meditation, or simply stillness. The brain responds to quiet with predictable patterns of healing and integration. The mechanisms are biological, though the meanings people derive from silence remain beautifully diverse. Silence improves sensory processing across all modalities through cross-modal plasticity. When one sense receives less input, the brain reallocates resources to other senses, temporarily enhancing their acuity. People exposed to 3 days of silence showed measurable improvements in vision, taste, smell, and touch in standardized clinical tests. Their visual contrast sensitivity increased by 12%. Taste thresholds lowered, allowing detection of subtler flavors. Touch discrimination improved, particularly for fine textures. These changes resulted from the brain's flexible allocation of processing power, with the auditory system less occupied. Other sensory cortices received more neural resources and blood flow. This is why food often tastes more intense in quiet restaurants, why visual details become more vivid in silent environments, and why meditation practitioners often report heightened sensory experiences. Long-term noise exposure causes structural brain changes that silence can partially reverse. Studies examining the brains of people living near airports or highways found reduced gray matter volume in regions including the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex. These changes correlated with chronic stress, sleep disruption, and elevated cardiovascular disease risk. However, participants who moved to quieter environments showed some recovery over 12 to 18 months. The brain demonstrated neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize and heal when conditions improved. Younger participants showed more complete recovery, but even older adults regained some of the lost gray matter. This research underscores that silence isn't merely the absence of harm from noise. It's an active healing force, giving the brain conditions it needs to repair damage and restore optimal structure. Silence synchronizes brain regions that noise keeps disconnected. Advanced neuroimaging techniques measuring functional connectivity show that in noisy environments, different brain networks tend to work in isolation. The visual network, auditory network, and attention networks operate relatively independently. In silence, these networks begin showing correlated activity patterns, synchronizing their oscillations and sharing information more freely. This integrated brain state correlates with enhanced problem-solving, better decision-making, and improved emotional regulation. The synchronization happens through phase locking of neural oscillations. Different regions begin firing in coordinated rhythms. After extended silence, this integrated state can persist even when noise returns, suggesting that regular quiet periods train the brain toward more coherent, efficient functioning patterns. Working memory, your brain's ability to hold and manipulate information temporarily, improves markedly in silence. Researchers testing verbal and spatial working memory under different acoustic conditions found consistent benefits from quiet participants could hold roughly 15 to 20% more information accurately and for longer durations when tested in silent versus noisy rooms. This happens because working memory relies on a network including the prefrontal cortex and parietal cortex, regions that must share processing resources with the auditory cortex when sound is present. In silence, more neural capacity becomes available for memory functions. This is why studying in quiet environments generally produces better retention, why important conversations often feel clearer without background noise, and why mental arithmetic becomes easier when you can't hear anything. The brain's reward system responds to silence after chronic noise exposure. People living in consistently loud environments show altered dopamine signaling in the nucleus accumbens and ventral tegmental area, core components of the reward pathway. When these individuals enter silent spaces, brain imaging reveals increased dopamine release and activation patterns, similar to those seen with pleasurable experiences like food or social connection. The brain essentially treats silence as a reward after noise-induced stress. This explains why quiet spaces feel so satisfying, why silence retreats attract stressed urban dwellers, and why even brief exposure to quiet produces feelings of relief and pleasure. Your brain has learned to value what restores it, creating neurochemical reinforcement for seeking the silence it needs to heal. Silence affects the perception of time itself. When psychologists ask people to estimate duration in silent versus noisy conditions, time estimates in silence tend to be longer, A 5-minute silent period often feels like 6 or 7 minutes to participants. This subjective time dilation occurs because attention becomes more focused inward, noticing the passage of moments more granularly, without external events marking time's passage. The brain relies more on internal processes, heartbeats, breath cycles, the flow of thoughts, creating a richer temporal texture. Meditation practitioners often describe time behaving strangely. During silent practice, hours can feel like minutes, or minutes like hours. These aren't just subjective experiences, but reflect how silence alters the neural systems that construct our temporal experience, changing our fundamental relationship with passing moments. Halfway through our understanding of silence, we can see how deeply it shapes neural processing. Silence isn't empty or passive. It's a sophisticated neurological state where the brain shifts from outward vigilance to inward integration, from stress responses to healing processes, from scattered attention to coherent synchronization. The research accumulated over recent years reveals that every minute of quiet provides measurable benefits: reduced stress hormones, enhanced connectivity, improved cognition, and structural brain changes that accumulate over time. These observations reveal that silence is not what we thought, absence, but rather a presence, a neurological environment as real and consequential as any sound. In quiet, your brain finds the conditions it evolved to require, but modern life rarely provides space to heal, integrate, and become itself. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside, trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing. Now we continue. Sleep quality transforms in silent environments. Polysomnography studies monitoring brain activity during sleep found that participants sleeping in rooms with noise below 30 decibels spent significantly more time in slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, the stages most crucial for physical restoration and memory consolidation. Even sounds below the threshold of conscious awareness fragment sleep architecture, causing micro-arousals that never fully wake you but prevent deep sleep. In contrast, silence allows natural sleep cycles to unfold without interruption. People sleeping in quiet environments reported feeling more rested after the same number of hours compared to noisy nights. Their brain waves showed smoother transitions between sleep stages, and morning cognitive tests revealed better memory retention and faster reaction times, demonstrating how nighttime silence compounds into daytime functioning. Silence reduces inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain. Researchers measuring inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6 found that participants in silence interventions showed decreased inflammation within days. Chronic noise exposure triggers inflammatory responses that affect the brain's microglia, immune cells that normally protect neurons but become overactive under chronic stress, damaging the very cells they should protect. Silence reverses this cycle. In quiet conditions, microglia return to their surveillance state rather than their reactive state, protecting neurons instead of threatening them. This anti-inflammatory effect may explain why silence correlates with reduced risk of neurodegenerative diseases. which often involve chronic neuroinflammation as a contributing factor. The insula, a region deep within the brain's lateral fissure, plays a crucial role in how we experience silence. This area integrates sensory information with emotional and cognitive processing, creating our subjective experience of internal states. In silence, the insula shows increased activity and connectivity with regions including the anterior cingulate cortex and prefrontal areas. This enhanced insular function correlates with better interoception, awareness of internal bodily states like hunger, thirst, heartbeat, and emotional feelings. People with stronger insular activity during quiet periods show better emotional regulation and self-awareness. The insula essentially uses silence as an opportunity to map your internal landscape more accurately, updating the brain's model of your physical and emotional self. This improved self-awareness persists after silence ends, influencing how you navigate subsequent experiences. Silence affects genetic expression through epigenetic mechanisms. Research examining neural tissue responses suggests that periods of silence may influence genes associated with neuroplasticity, while decreasing activity of genes linked to stress responses. These changes occur through methylation patterns, chemical tags that don't alter DNA sequences but affect which genes are active. Studies show increased expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein crucial for neuron survival and growth, following extended quiet periods. Conversely, genes for stress receptors showed decreased expression, making cells less reactive to stress hormones. These epigenetic changes suggest silence influences not just neural activity, but the fundamental molecular machinery that builds and maintains the brain. Effects that could potentially pass to future generations through inherited methylation patterns. Blood pressure responds to silence with a consistency that cardiologists find remarkable. A comprehensive 2024 study measuring ambulatory blood pressure, continuous monitoring over 24-hour periods, found that people incorporating 2 hours of silence into their daily routine showed systolic blood pressure reductions averaging 6 to 8 millimeters of mercury and diastolic reductions of 3 to 5 millimeters. These decreases rival the effects of some medications and significantly reduce cardiovascular disease risk. The mechanism involves the autonomic nervous system silence, reduces sympathetic fight or flight activity, while enhancing parasympathetic rest and digest tone. This autonomic rebalancing dilates blood vessels, reduces heart rate, and improves arterial elasticity. The effects accumulate over time. The longer people practice regular silence, the more their baseline blood pressure normalizes. Even during non-silent periods, creativity and problem-solving abilities flourish in silence through the brain's ability to make distant associations. When neuroscientists tested creative thinking under different acoustic conditions, participants in silence generated more novel solutions and made more unusual conceptual connections compared to those with background noise. Brain imaging during creative tasks in silence showed enhanced communication between the DMN and the executive control network. Regions that normally anti-correlate, this unusual cooperation allows internal thoughts, DMN, to interact with goal-directed processing, executive network, producing creative insights. The silent brain essentially runs parallel processing streams that converge on unexpected solutions. patterns that constant external stimulation prevents by keeping the executive network locked on immediate environmental demands. Tinnitus. The perception of sound when none exists externally provides paradoxical insight into how silence affects the brain. About 15 to 20% of people experience tinnitus, often as ringing or buzzing in the absence of external sound. Counterintuitively, silence makes tinnitus more noticeable, which some interpret as evidence that silence is problematic. But recent research reveals that tinnitus results from the auditory cortex's hyperactivity, trying to compensate for missing auditory input. Usually, from hearing damage, the silence doesn't cause this dysfunction. It reveals it. For people with tinnitus, treatments increasingly involve mindfulness and acceptance of silence rather than sound masking. By learning to coexist peacefully with tinnitus during quiet periods, patients reduce the distress it causes, demonstrating that our relationship with silence involves interpretation as much as sensation. The brainstem, one of the brain's most ancient structures, filters sound continuously even during sleep, but it relies on silence for recalibration. This filtering happens in the reticular activating system, which determines which sensory signals reach higher brain regions and which get suppressed. Constant noise keeps this system in high alert mode, passing more information upward and preventing the filtering refinement that occurs during quiet. In silence, the reticular activating system adjusts its thresholds, becoming more selective and efficient. This recalibration improves signal-to-noise ratios in subsequent sound processing. After periods of silence, your brain becomes better at detecting relevant sounds while ignoring irrelevant ones. Audiologists use this principle when treating auditory processing disorders, incorporating silent intervals to help the brainstem reset its filtering parameters. Silence enhances the brain's ability to consolidate emotional experiences into coherent memories. The amygdala and hippocampus, working together, tag experiences with emotional significance and integrate them into long-term memory. This process, called emotional memory consolidation, occurs most effectively during quiet periods, particularly sleep, but also waking silence. Studies tracking participants through emotionally challenging experiences found that those given silent reflection time afterward showed better emotional processing and less emotional distress when recalling events weeks later. The silence allowed their brains to metabolize the emotional content, integrating it into narrative memory rather than leaving it as fragmented traumatic impressions. This explains why many therapeutic approaches, from psychoanalysis to EMDR, incorporate silent reflection periods. Giving the brain time to process facilitates healing that constant distraction prevents. Age-related cognitive decline slows measurably in people who regularly experience silence. Longitudinal studies following older adults over 10 to 15 years found that those living in quieter environments or practicing regular silent meditation maintained cognitive function better than demographically matched controls. The protective effect was most pronounced for verbal memory and executive function. Neuroimaging showed that these individuals retained more gray matter in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, regions typically vulnerable to aging. The mechanisms likely involve multiple factors: reduced chronic stress, better sleep quality, enhanced neurogenesis, and regular activation of neuroplasticity pathways. Silence essentially provides the conditions where aging brains can maintain and repair themselves, potentially adding years of healthy cognitive function. Silence affects neurotransmitter balance throughout the brain. While stress hormones decrease, several beneficial neurotransmitters increase. Serotonin, involved in mood regulation and well-being, shows elevated levels during and after silent periods. GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter that calms neural activity, increases in silence, explaining the sense of relaxation quiet provides. Dopamine, already mentioned regarding reward, also enhances learning and motivation in optimal ranges. Even glutamate, the main excitatory neurotransmitter, shows more balanced patterns in silence rather than the excessive spikes seen with chronic stress and noise. This neurotransmitter rebalancing creates a brain environment conducive to learning, emotional stability, and resilience. The changes happen relatively quickly. Measurable shifts occur within 20 to 30 minutes of entering sustained silence, compounding with continued quiet exposure. Silence helps break rumination cycles, repetitive negative thoughts that characterize anxiety and depression. Brain imaging studies show that rumination involves hyperactivity in specific DMN regions combined with reduced prefrontal control. Paradoxically, although the DMN activates in silence, quiet periods don't increase rumination in most people. They reduce it. The difference lies in the quality of thought. Rumination is repetitive and circular, while silence-facilitated thought tends to be more fluid and exploratory. Research participants describing their thoughts during silence reported less circular thinking and more progression toward resolution compared to their baseline rumination. The explanation seems to involve silence, allowing broader DMN activation patterns rather than the constrained patterns characteristic of rumination, essentially freeing thoughts to move toward resolution rather than cycling endlessly in worry. The cerebellum, traditionally associated with motor coordination, also responds to silence in ways neuroscientists are still discovering. Recent research reveals the cerebellum contains more neurons than the rest of the brain combined and connects extensively with cognitive and emotional regions, not just motor areas. During silence, the cerebellum shows altered activity patterns, particularly in areas connecting to prefrontal cortex. This cerebellar prefrontal communication seems to support the cognitive flexibility and emotional regulation improvements seen in quiet conditions. People with cerebellar damage often struggle with both motor timing and cognitive timing, the rhythm and sequencing of thoughts. Silence may allow the cerebellum to optimize these timing functions across both motor and cognitive domains, improving the coordination of mental processes just as it coordinates physical movements. Silence affects social cognition and empathy through its influence on the brain's mentalizing network. This network, involving the medial prefrontal cortex, temporoparietal junction, and posterior superior temporal sulcus, allows us to understand others' mental states, their thoughts, feelings, and intentions. Constant noise and overstimulation reduce activity in these regions, potentially diminishing empathic capacity. Studies of silent retreat participants found enhanced mentalizing network function and improved performance on tasks requiring social perspective taking. Participants reported feeling more connected to others and more aware of subtle social cues. This suggests silence creates neural conditions for deeper social understanding, allowing the brain to devote resources to modeling other minds, rather than just processing immediate environmental stimulation. Paradoxically, withdrawing into quiet can strengthen the very capacities that make us social beings. 40 facts in. We can recognize a clear patterned silence changes how we see the brain itself. What seemed like simple absence, the lack of sound, reveals itself as a complex neurological state with measurable effects on structure, chemistry, connectivity, and function. From the molecular level of genetic expression to the large-scale networks of consciousness, quiet creates conditions for healing, integration, and optimization. The research accumulated over the past decade points toward a conclusion that seems both obvious and meaningful. The human brain evolved, requiring both sound and silence, activity and rest, stimulation and quiet integration. Modern life has given us endless access to the first half of each pair while restricting access to the second. In rediscovering silence, we're not finding something new, but recovering something essential we'd nearly lost. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering, like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring silence itself. The very thing creating this space right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. From an evolutionary perspective, silence carried crucial survival information that shaped how our brains developed. For our ancestors, sudden quiet often signaled danger, predators approaching, prey freezing, other humans hiding. The auditory cortex evolved to treat unexpected silence as significant as unexpected sound, maintaining vigilance even when nothing was heard. But regular, expected silence served different functions: periods of rest, safe hiding, sleep without threats. These different types of silence activated different neural responses. Modern brains inherited this dual relationship. We can experience silence as either alerting or calming depending on context. Understanding this helps explain why some silence feels peaceful, while other silence feels ominous. Our evolutionary heritage still influences how neural circuits interpret quiet, reading absence as either safety or threat. Sleep evolved partly as a response to night silence. As diurnal creatures, our ancestors faced extended periods of darkness and relative quiet when visual hunting and foraging became impossible. Rather than waste energy staying alert in conditions poorly suited to our senses, natural selection favored those who could use quiet, dark hours for restoration. The circadian rhythm's coupling with the sleep-wake cycle links closely to the day-night pattern of sound and silence in pre-industrial environments. Modern technology disrupts this ancient pattern, filling night with artificial light and sound. This disruption confuses systems that evolved expecting darkness to be quiet. One reason artificial nighttime noise damages sleep quality so deeply is that it contradicts millions of years of evolutionary programming linking silence, darkness, and restorative rest. Silence provided evolutionary advantages for learning and memory consolidation. In dangerous environments, immediate reaction to threats took precedence over complex learning. But during safe, quiet periods, in protected shelters, after successful hunts, during tribal gatherings at night, the brain could devote resources to processing recent experiences, extracting patterns, and consolidating lessons. This is why memory consolidation remains tied to quiet and sleep. The mechanisms evolved when silence indicated safety for deeper processing. Individuals whose brains used quiet periods more effectively for learning likely had survival advantages, passing on genes that made their descendants' brains particularly responsive to silence for cognitive processing. We inherited brains, optimized to use quiet as an opportunity for the mental organization that immediate pressures don't allow. The human capacity for language likely depended on silence as much as sound. Early communication required not just making vocalizations, but listening, interpreting subtle distinctions, and maintaining shared attention. These cognitive demands work best in relatively quiet environments where acoustic details remain clear and neural resources can focus on linguistic processing rather than environmental scanning. Archaeological evidence suggests that once humans developed sophisticated language, they also began creating quiet spaces, shelters that reduced external noise, gathering places protected from wind and water. This coevolution of language and silence-seeking behavior suggests that as communication became more complex, so did the need for acoustic environments that supported it. Silent listening became as important as speaking, shaping brain regions for both production and comprehension. Meditation and contemplative practices, found across human cultures worldwide, represent an evolutionary exploitation of silence's neural effects. Even without understanding neuroscience, ancient humans discovered that quiet periods enhanced insight, emotional regulation, and group cohesion. Practices involving silence emerged independently in diverse cultures. From Buddhist meditation to Christian contemplative prayer to indigenous vision quests, suggesting they address universal human neurological needs. These practices didn't create new brain capacities, but rather optimized existing ones, using silence to access and enhance networks for self-awareness, emotional integration, and transcendent experiences. The fact that such practices persist across millennia and cultures implies they provided genuine benefits. Individuals and groups practicing silence gained advantages in psychological resilience, decision-making, or social cohesion that enhanced survival and reproduction. Silence played a role in human bonding and social cohesion. Shared quiet, sitting together around fires, resting after hunts, caring for infants, created opportunities for synchronization beyond language. Modern research shows that people sitting together in silence often synchronize their breathing patterns, heart rates, and brain activity. This physiological coordination builds trust and social bonds without words. The neural systems supporting this synchrony evolved because groups whose members could coordinate effectively had survival advantages. Silent coordination allowed for hunting cooperation, danger response, and collective decision-making that constant noise would disrupt. We inherited brains capable of using shared silence to build connection, which is why comfortable silence with others feels so different and so bonding, compared to anxious silence with strangers. The evolution of motherhood and infant care created selection pressures favoring silence sensitivity. Human infants are uniquely helpless and noisy, requiring extended care while their brains develop. Mothers who could detect subtle changes in breathing, movement, or crying amid background noise had babies who survived more often. This created selection for auditory systems highly sensitive to silence variations. The ability to hear baby's breath stop, detect pre-cry vocalizations, notice subtle distress signals. These maternal auditory capabilities persist in modern brains, explaining why many people, especially those with caregiving experience, find silence simultaneously restful and alerting, relaxing while maintaining awareness. The neural circuits evolved to use quiet, not for total disengagement, but for refined attention to what matters most. Seasonal variations in noise and silence shaped human adaptation. Pre-industrial humans experienced considerable seasonal changes in acoustic environments, summer's insect chorus and bird song, winter's quiet under snow, rainy seasons' constant drumming, dry seasons' stillness. These cycles influenced when different activities occurred and likely shaped circannual rhythms beyond the well-studied circadian patterns. Research on people living in environments with significant seasonal acoustic variation shows corresponding changes in sleep duration, cognitive performance, and mood, changes that don't occur as strongly in constant acoustic environments. Our brains may be adapted to expect variation in silence and noise across timescales from hours to months. The modern world's relatively constant noise level year-round may represent another form of disruption. Preventing natural seasonal mental adjustments, the development of music and complex sound required silence as counterpoint. Every musical tradition includes pauses, rests, and moments of quiet that create rhythm, meaning, and emotional impact. Neurologically, the brain processes these silent intervals actively, anticipating resolutions, creating tension, marking boundaries between phrases. Studies of musical perception show that removing all silence from music eliminates much of its emotional and cognitive effect. Continuous sound without pause becomes noise. The neural circuits for music appreciation evolved to extract meaning from patterns that include both sound and silence. This suggests that from an evolutionary perspective, silence wasn't just empty space between sounds, but a fundamental component of how humans learned to create and appreciate complex acoustic art. Halfway through our journey, we see evolution painted not just in ancient bones, but in living neural circuits that still crave what our ancestors needed: cycles of sound and silence, stimulation and rest, vigilance and integration. Natural selection favored brains that could use quiet for restoration, learning, bonding, and survival. We inherited those brains, carrying within our skulls mechanisms optimized for an acoustic environment very different from modern life. The stress, exhaustion, and cognitive difficulties so many people experience may partly reflect a mismatch between our evolutionary heritage and our current environment. Brains designed for natural cycles of noise and silence trying to function in constant stimulation. Understanding this evolutionary context suggests not just individual solutions, but recognition that silence represents a biological need we disregard at our peril. And imagine, even when everything seems empty, space is always full of waves, vibrations, invisible energy. The silence inside and around you is never truly empty. Imagine you're floating on a calm lake, but beneath the surface, there's always gentle current. Now we continue the journey. Modern life presents challenges to silence, that would have been unimaginable to humans even 150 years ago. Traffic noise, averaging 70 to 85 decibels. Air conditioning hum. Electronics. Sirens. Aircraft overhead. Neighbors' activities through thin walls. Rural areas increasingly face noise pollution from highways, industrial operations, and recreational vehicles. Research measuring environmental noise levels over decades shows steady increases in most populated areas. This doesn't just inconvenience us. It fundamentally conflicts with neural systems, expecting regular, quiet periods. The result is a population-wide experiment in chronic noise exposure, with effects we're only beginning to measure: elevated stress hormones, sleep fragmentation, cognitive deficits, and cardiovascular disease at rates our ancestors never experienced. The concept of acoustic privacy has nearly vanished from modern architecture and urban planning. Traditional buildings with thick walls, small windows, and sound-absorbing materials created quiet internal spaces. Modern construction emphasizes open plans, large windows, thin walls, and hard surfaces that reflect sound. Designs that prioritize visual aesthetics and construction costs over acoustic quality. The result: even expensive homes provide little silence. Studies comparing stress markers in people living in acoustically well-designed versus typical modern housing show significant differences. Those with genuine acoustic privacy have lower stress hormones, better sleep, and superior cognitive performance. Architects and neuroscientists are beginning to collaborate on neuroarchitecture that recognizes silence as essential infrastructure, not luxury. Designing spaces that provide the quiet human brains require for health. Technology has created an illusion of control over sound while actually reducing our access to silence. Headphones and earbuds seem to offer personal acoustic choice, but research reveals they often trap users in continuous sound. Music, podcasts, notifications, preventing the brain from accessing quiet. Studies tracking technology use suggest many people spend multiple hours daily with continuous audio input through earbuds, replacing natural environmental silence. When asked to remove earbuds for a day, many reported anxiety and discomfort, suggesting dependence on constant auditory input. This isn't necessarily pathological, but it does indicate how thoroughly noise has colonized even voluntary moments. The earbuds designed to give us control over our acoustic environment have instead become delivery mechanisms for constant stimulation, making silence something that must be actively chosen rather than a natural default state. Children growing up today experience considerably less silence than previous generations, with unknown consequences for brain development. Researchers tracking daily noise exposure in children found that more than 70% never experience environments below 40 decibels outside of sleep, and even their sleeping environments often exceed this, with fans, white noise machines, and ambient electronics. Since critical brain development occurs throughout childhood and adolescence, this represents an extended experiment in noise-saturated development. Early data suggest potential impacts on attention systems, emotional regulation, and stress responses. The developing brain's plasticity means it adapts to prevailing conditions. Children raised in constant noise may literally develop different neural architecture than those with regular access to quiet. Digital technology has created new categories of noise notification sounds. Alert chimes, message tones, app notifications that interrupt not just silence, but also continuous sound with unexpected acoustic intrusions. These interruptions are particularly disruptive because unpredictability triggers startle responses and prevents habituation. Brain imaging shows that random notification sounds cause greater amygdala activation and stress hormone release than continuous ambient noise at the same volume. People in studies who disabled non-essential notifications for a week reported improved mood, better concentration, and higher quality sleep, benefits that persisted when notifications remained off. The constant availability these sounds represent comes at neurological cost: fragmented attention, elevated baseline stress, and interrupted thought processes that prevent the deeper cognitive work silence allows. The loss of natural silence parallels other environmental losses like clean air and water, but receives far less attention. Acoustic ecologists studying remote areas document sound pollution, spreading even into wilderness areas supposedly protected from human encroachment. Aircraft noise, distant highway sound, and atmospheric changes from climate disruption alter even remote acoustic environments. One study found that truly pristine acoustic environments, areas where natural sounds dominate completely, existed in less than 3% of the contiguous United States. The significance extends beyond aesthetics. These natural soundscapes provided the acoustic environment in which human hearing and cognition evolved. Their disappearance means we're losing not just pleasant sounds, but the baseline acoustic conditions our brains expect, adding another stressor to systems already challenged by modern life. Workplaces have become particularly hostile to silence, with open office plans creating constant low-level noise that impairs cognitive work. Studies comparing productivity in open versus closed offices consistently show worse performance in open environments, 15 to 30% reductions in complex cognitive tasks, increased errors, and elevated stress markers. The problem isn't just noise volume, but unpredictability. Intermittent conversations, ringing phones, keyboard clicks, sounds the brain cannot habituate to because they're variable. Employers implementing quiet hours or providing soundproof focus rooms report improved output and employee satisfaction. Some companies now monitor acoustic environments like they monitor air quality, recognizing that silence isn't an amenity but a prerequisite for the cognitive work they're paying people to perform. The human relationship with silence has always been ambivalent, but modern life has tipped the balance toward avoidance. Surveys show many people report discomfort with quiet, using terms like awkward, anxious, or boring. This discomfort likely has multiple sources. Silence reveals internal thoughts some people prefer to avoid. Cultural messages equating constant activity with productivity, and genuine unfamiliarity. Habituation to constant noise makes quiet feel abnormal. But brain imaging during silence in noise-habituated individuals shows typical activation of self-referential and emotional networks. The discomfort isn't neurological abnormality, but rather the unfamiliar experience of noticing internal processes usually drowned out. Learning to tolerate and eventually value silence often requires simply gradual exposure, allowing the brain to rediscover its natural quiet mode. Social expectations around silence have shifted considerably. Historically, shared silence was normal families sitting together, travelers sharing space, workers focused on tasks without continuous conversation. Modern social norms increasingly treat silence as awkward, requiring explanation or filling. Smartphone use partly represents filling silence avoidance. People scroll rather than sit, with moments of quiet waiting, commuting, or just being. Research comparing social satisfaction shows that people who can comfortably share silence with others report higher relationship quality and emotional intimacy than those who feel compelled to fill quiet with conversation. The ability to be silent together indicates secure attachment and mutual comfort. Paradoxically, as communication technologies proliferate, the capacity for comfortable shared silence, a fundamental human social skill, may be eroding, particularly in younger generations less exposed to it. Healthcare environments, where healing is supposedly the priority, often provide remarkably little silence. Hospitals feature paging systems, alarms, conversations, equipment, noise, 24-hour soundscapes that impede recovery. Studies measuring patient outcomes show that those in quieter hospital rooms have shorter stays, better sleep, lower pain medication requirements, and faster healing. The mechanisms are the same as those benefiting healthy people: reduced stress responses, better sleep quality, enhanced immune function. Progressive healthcare systems now implement quiet protocols, silent hours, noise monitoring, architectural redesign to reduce reverberation. These changes recognize that silence isn't just patient comfort, but medical intervention, providing conditions where healing mechanisms can function optimally. The shift represents a fundamental reconceptualization: quiet as therapy, not merely amenity. Educational systems increasingly recognize that silence supports learning. Traditional classrooms that equated noise with chaos and quiet with boredom are giving way to understanding that different learning modes require different acoustic environments. Complex problem solving, reading comprehension, and creative work all improve in quiet conditions. Some schools now provide silent study halls, quiet zones, or contemplation rooms where students can access silence when needed. Teachers incorporating brief silent periods during class report improved student focus and reduced behavioral problems. The change reflects neuroscience, showing that learning requires not just information input, but also quiet processing time when the brain consolidates, integrates, and transforms information into understanding. Work that noise interrupts and silence facilitates. The therapeutic use of silence has gained recognition across mental health disciplines. Psychotherapists increasingly value silence within sessions, rather than rushing to fill quiet moments with speech. These silences allow clients to access deeper feelings, process interpretations, and integrate insights. Brain imaging during therapeutic silence shows activation of self-referential processing networks and emotional regulation systems. Clients often report that silent periods in therapy feel most productive, even when initially uncomfortable. This parallels findings from silent meditation retreats in treating conditions like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Structured silence, properly supported, allows the brain to process material that constant activity keeps suppressed. The silence isn't avoiding problems, but rather creating conditions where the brain can engage them more deeply than distracted activity allows. Religious and spiritual practices across cultures have always recognized silence's transformative power, and neuroscience increasingly validates their insights. Contemplative silence activates and strengthens the same brain networks that support moral reasoning, compassion, and transcendent experiences. This doesn't reduce spirituality to neuroscience, but rather suggests that ancient wisdom identified practices that optimize beneficial brain states. Modern practitioners of meditation, prayer, and contemplation often report that regular silence practice changes how they experience daily life. Increased equanimity, improved emotional regulation, enhanced sense of meaning and connection. Brain scans confirm structural changes in regions supporting these capacities. The practices work not through supernatural means, but by providing conditions where natural neurological potentials for wisdom, compassion, and insight can develop fully. The concept of noise literacy, understanding and advocating for healthy acoustic environments, is emerging as a public health priority. Just as people learned about nutrition, exercise, and sleep hygiene, growing evidence suggests sound environment deserves similar attention. Noise literacy includes recognizing harmful noise levels, understanding cumulative effects, identifying personal needs for quiet, and creating or seeking silence amid noise. Communities developing noise literacy show measurable health improvements, reduced stress-related illness, better mental health, improved academic performance. The shift requires recognizing silence as a resource to protect and cultivate, rather than empty space to fill. Individuals with noise literacy make different choices. Residential locations, workplace negotiations, daily schedules that prioritize access to the quiet their brains require. Halfway through our exploration of modern life, we can recognize a central challenge. We've created a world increasingly incompatible with brains that evolved requiring regular silence. The consequences appear in rising anxiety rates, sleep disorders, attention deficits, and chronic stress-related illness. These aren't moral failures or individual weaknesses, but predictable results of the noise-saturated environment we've constructed. The good news: human brains retain remarkable plasticity and healing capacity. Access to even modest amounts of regular silence produces measurable benefits. The challenge isn't discovering how silence helps. Research has established that clearly, but rather restructuring individual lives and collective spaces to make silence accessible again. This requires treating quiet not as luxury but as infrastructure, as essential as clean air or potable water for human flourishing. Urban planning is slowly incorporating silence as a design principle. Some cities now map quiet zones, areas where noise regulations are strictly enforced. Analogous to green space preservation, Paris implemented quiet hours in certain neighborhoods. Copenhagen integrates acoustic design into urban development. These changes reflect growing recognition that livable cities must provide acoustic refuge, not just visual aesthetics or efficient transportation. Research comparing health outcomes in cities with and without acoustic planning shows significant differences in stress-related illness, sleep quality, and even property values. Residents value quiet neighborhoods increasingly highly, willing to pay premiums for acoustic quality. This emerging market for silence creates economic incentives aligning with health needs, potentially driving broader change in how we design human environments. Technology offers potential solutions alongside the problems it creates. Active noise cancellation, sound masking systems, And architectural acoustics can create silence even in noisy environments. Apps track noise exposure and remind users to seek quiet. Smart home systems can create scheduled silent periods, automatically silencing notifications and unnecessary sounds. However, technological solutions risk becoming another form of control and consumption, rather than genuine environmental improvement. The question is whether technology serves to restore access to natural silence, or merely creates expensive workarounds for problems technology helped create. Ideal solutions likely combine technology with environmental changes, personal practices, and policy interventions, recognizing that silence requires multi-level support, from individual choices through community standards to societal infrastructure. Economic systems increasingly recognize silence's value, though often in problematic ways. Luxury hotels market silence retreats at premium prices. High-end residential developments advertise superior sound insulation. Noise-canceling headphones command significant market share. This commercialization confirms silence's value, but also raises equity concerns if silence becomes a luxury good. What happens to those unable to pay for quiet? Some researchers argue for treating silence as a public health right, similar to clean water or air. This would require noise regulations, acoustic standards for housing and workplaces, and public investment in quiet spaces accessible to everyone, regardless of economic status. The challenge is shifting from silence as commodity to silence as commons, recognizing it as a shared resource necessary for human flourishing. Personal practices for accessing silence often begin simply but require surprising discipline in noise-saturated contexts. Starting the day without immediately checking phones or turning on music, commuting without podcasts or music occasionally, eating meals without television or devices, walking without earbuds. These practices sound easy, but prove challenging for many people habituated to constant auditory input. The discomfort reveals how thoroughly noise has colonized daily life. People beginning silence practices often report an adjustment period. Initial anxiety giving way to appreciation as the brain readjusts to quiet as normal rather than abnormal. Regular practitioners describe improved mood, better sleep, enhanced focus, and paradoxically, improved social connection. Spending less time in simulated connection, media, devices, creates more capacity for genuine presence with others and oneself. The relationship between solitude and silence deserves attention. While distinct, silence refers to acoustic environment, solitude to social context. They often occur together and may potentiate each other's benefits. Silent solitude allows for the deepest self-reflection and emotional processing, activating brain networks for autobiographical reasoning and self-referential thought most strongly. However, modern life makes both silence and solitude increasingly rare and even stigmatized. Constant connectivity keeps people in continuous partial social attention even when physically alone. Research shows that people with regular access to silent solitude show better psychological well-being, stronger sense of identity, and better relationship quality than those lacking either element. The benefits aren't about avoiding others, but about maintaining the self-knowledge that makes genuine connection possible. Night silence faces particular threats from modern lifestyle patterns. Beyond urban noise pollution, many people fill their sleeping environments with constant sound fans, white noise machines, television, music. While some background sound can mask disruptive noise and help some individuals sleep, research suggests that learning to sleep in silence produces more restorative sleep architecture. The brain processes even constant background sound, maintaining arousal systems that prevent the deepest sleep stages. Progressive sleep medicine now sometimes recommends gradual weaning from sleep sound machines, allowing the brain to adjust to natural quiet. For those in genuinely noisy environments, targeted soundproofing often proves more beneficial than sound masking, creating true silence rather than replacing problematic noise with supposedly benign noise. The concept of sound walking, deliberately paying attention to acoustic environments while moving through spaces, offers a practice for developing acoustic awareness and finding existing silence. Soundwalkers report discovering quiet spots they'd never noticed, despite years of living or working in an area courtyard gardens, library corners, early morning hours in otherwise busy locations. This practice reveals that silence often exists in temporal or spatial niches within noisy environments, accessible to those who seek it. Soundwalking also develops appreciation for environmental sounds, bird calls, wind, water, rustling leaves, natural sounds that provide relief from mechanical noise, even when they aren't technically silent. The practice reconnects people with acoustic dimensions of environments, usually experienced primarily visually, revealing unseen layers and resources for managing acoustic well-being. Silence advocacy, collective action to preserve and create quiet, grows as awareness increases about noise's health impacts. Community groups lobby for noise ordinances, challenge excessive noise pollution, and advocate for acoustic quality in public planning. These movements parallel earlier environmental activism around air and water quality, recognizing sound environment as ecosystem requiring protection. Legal frameworks are developing. Some jurisdictions now include right to quiet in residential codes. Others restrict commercial noise levels. Some protect natural soundscapes in parks. These changes reflect evolving understanding that noise represents not just annoyance, but genuine environmental hazard requiring regulation. Silence advocacy faces challenges from economic interests that profit from noise-generating activities, making it not just personal health issue but political and economic struggle. The generational dimension of silence loss deserves attention. Each generation experiences less silence than the previous, creating a ratchet effect where normal expectations continually shift. People who grew up with regular quiet have different baseline expectations and often report greater distress at noise than those who never knew extensive silence. Younger generations, raised in continuous sound, may not recognize what they're missing, experiencing consequences, stress, sleep problems, attention issues, without connecting them to acoustic environment. However, young people exposed to silence interventions often report notable effects, suggesting that while they've adapted to noise, they still benefit from quiet. The challenge is helping younger generations discover needs they didn't know they had for experiences they haven't previously accessed. 3/4 through our journey, we see that silence in modern life is neither lost nor inevitable, but rather something requiring active cultivation in environments designed around noise. The consequences of silence deprivation affect individuals, communities, and possibly the trajectory of human consciousness itself. Chronic noise creates populations that are more stressed, less reflective, more reactive. Characteristics that influence everything, from personal relationships to political culture to collective decision-making. Conversely, access to silence supports the cognitive complexity, emotional regulation, and reflective capacity that complex challenges require. The choice isn't between silence and sound, but about recovering balance between stimulation and rest, external focus and internal awareness, doing and being. That balance represents not nostalgia for an idealized past, but recognition of enduring neurological needs. Almost done. Relax even deeper. Did you know most matter, from a grain of sand to a star, is empty space? Atoms are mostly empty space between nucleus and electrons. Even your body is more space than matter. So let go. Let all pressure, all worry dissolve, like dust particles floating, drifting in the immense silence. We'll continue with the final facts. Silence connects us to vastness beyond individual concerns. When external noise stops and internal chatter quiets, what remains is psychological spaciousness. Room for experiences beyond the personal narrative that normally dominates consciousness. This appears across contemplative traditions, Buddhist emptiness, mystics' cloud of unknowing, secular descriptions of oceanic feeling. Neuroscience suggests these experiences reflect particular brain states where self-referential networks partially quiet, allowing other awareness to emerge. The brain, given silence, naturally gravitates toward these transcendent states. In silence, the distinction between inner and outer gradually softens. With eyes closed in quiet, does the sound of your breath originate inside or outside you? The hum you sometimes hear in deep silence? Is it your nervous system or subtle environmental vibration? Neuroscience reveals these questions have no absolute answers. The brain constructs boundaries between self and environment through active interpretation. In noise, clear differences maintain boundaries. In silence, they blur, revealing identity itself as more fluid than we typically imagine. Silence reveals the provisional nature of all mental content. Thoughts arise, persist briefly, and dissolve back into quiet. Emotions emerge, intensify, and fade. In noise and activity, these mental phenomena seem solid, demanding response. In silence, their transient nature becomes apparent. This isn't nihilism but experiential wisdom. All phenomena pass, including difficult ones. Brain imaging during these insights shows activation patterns in regions associated with emotional regulation and cognitive reappraisal. The shift creates lasting effects: greater equanimity, reduced anxiety, comfort with impermanence. Silence can be uncomfortable precisely because it removes distractions that protect us from what we'd rather not face. Unresolved grief, suppressed anger, existential questions, recognition of mortality. These emerge more forcefully in quiet. Therapeutic traditions recognize this silence isn't always pleasant but often productive, bringing forward material needing attention. People who persist through initial discomfort often report that what seemed unbearable becomes manageable, even transformative. Silence provides the container where difficult material can be processed rather than perpetually avoided. Time slows in silence. Or rather, our experience of time changes. Minutes feel longer. Hours pass differently. This temporal expansion creates one of silence's great gifts, more felt life within the same clock time. The mechanism involves attention. Distributed attention in noise compresses each moment in memory. Focused attention in silence gives each moment fuller awareness. Expanding subjective duration. This explains why years seem to accelerate as we age. Decreasing novelty and increasing distraction compress experience. Silence democratizes. It costs nothing, requires no equipment, needs no training, benefits everyone. Yet paradoxically, access to silence increasingly correlates with privilege. Expensive neighborhoods are quieter. Rural retreats cost money. Time for silence requires economic security. This contradiction represents environmental injustice. Those most affected by stress have least access to the quiet that could help. Addressing this requires treating silence as infrastructure requiring public investment, not individual luxury available only to those who can afford to purchase it through location or retreats. Silence doesn't erase personality but reveals it more clearly. Without social performance, demands, or entertainment distractions, who you actually are becomes more apparent. Some discover they enjoy their own company more than expected. Others find solitude more difficult than imagined. Both discoveries are valuable. Accurate self-knowledge guides better life choices. Regular silent periods allow people to notice gradual changes, shifting values, emerging interests. Evolving priorities often become clear in quiet before manifesting externally. In silence, causality becomes unclear. Without the constant narrative of events and responses that noise supports, the sense of being an agent causing things begins to feel less certain. Am I choosing thoughts, or do they arise spontaneously? Am I controlling breathing, or simply noticing it? Neuroscience suggests our sense of agency involves post hoc interpretation. Silence reveals this construction process. Sometimes unsettling, but also liberating if agency is partial. So too is absolute responsibility and blame. Silence can evoke grief for time past, opportunities missed, relationships lost without distraction. The weight of all that's gone becomes palpable. Yet contemplative traditions suggest this grief serves a purpose. Unprocessed loss accumulates, weighing on the present. Silence allows gentle processing, mourning in doses small enough to bear. Research on grief shows that avoidance extends suffering, while willingness to face loss facilitates adaptation. Silence provides the container where tears can fall and loss can be integrated. The sounds that eventually emerge from silence: birdsong after a quiet morning, a friend's voice after hours alone, carry different qualities than the same sounds heard amid constant noise. They sound clearer, more detailed, more emotionally resonant. This happens because silence resets auditory processing, enhancing sensitivity. The brain, having rested its sound processing systems, brings fresh attention to new input. Perhaps this is why returning from silence feels like waking with new senses. Silence reveals the question behind the question. Not what should I do, but who is asking. Not how do I solve this, but what patterns keep creating these problems. The meta perspective that silence facilitates shifts attention from content to process, from specific concerns to underlying dynamics. This explains why retreat participants often return not with answers to the questions they brought, but with recognition that different questions matter more. Paradoxically, silence can be the loudest experience. The volume of usually ignored internal noise becomes deafening when external noise stops. The mind's constant commentary normally competes with environmental sound for attention. In silence, it dominates awareness completely. Many people are shocked by mental noisiness they never fully noticed, but awareness of internal noise is the first step toward quieting it. Long-term practitioners report that mental chatter gradually decreases, not through suppression but through natural settling. Silence connects individual experience to universal human experience across time. Every person who has ever sat in quiet has encountered similar phenomena: wandering thoughts, emerging emotions, the breath's rise and fall, the sense of space and presence. Reading ancient meditation texts or mystic poetry, you recognize your own experiences despite centuries separating you from the authors. Silence reveals not just personal truth, but human truth, connecting you to the unbroken lineage of contemplatives. In silence, pretense becomes difficult to maintain. The persona we present to others requires social feedback and activity's momentum for reinforcement. In quiet solitude, constructed identities feel increasingly hollow, revealing the gap between who we claim to be and who we actually are. This can be painful but also liberating. Extended silence helps people identify which aspects of personality are authentic versus performative, allowing more conscious choice about what to keep and what to release. So could silence change how we understand the mind? It already has. Neuroscience has confirmed what contemplatives long claimed: silence isn't empty, but full. Not passive, but active. Not escape, but engagement with deeper realities, normally obscured by noise. Research showing structural brain changes from silence has fundamentally altered how we conceptualize healthy cognition. The mind isn't optimized by constant stimulation, but by rhythms alternating between engagement and silence. Like breathing requires both inhalation and exhalation, silence is the space where wisdom emerges. Not wisdom as accumulated knowledge, but wisdom as direct seeing, perceiving things as they actually are, rather than through filters of conditioning and preference. Noise supports these filters, rarely challenging them. Silence removes familiar reference points, allowing perception to refresh. Insights arising in silence feel qualitatively different from thoughts arising in activity. More certain, more settled, carrying authority that intellectual conclusions lack. The silence between us can be as communicative as words, sometimes more so. Sitting quietly with someone grieving, the hours after lovemaking, friends comfortable enough to share space without filling it. These silences convey understanding and presence that words often fail to match. Neuroscience shows synchronized brain activity between people, sharing quiet neural oscillations align. Heart rates coordinate. Breathing patterns mirror each other. This physiological synchrony creates connection below the level of language. Silence can be frightening, precisely because it leaves us alone with existence itself. Confronting fundamental questions, activity helps postpone. Why am I here? What matters? What happens when I die? Many avoid silence, largely to avoid these confrontations. Yet contemplative traditions suggest that facing existential questions directly, though initially unsettling, ultimately provides foundation for authentic living. The brain apparently needs to process these fundamental concerns. Suppressing them requires energy and creates anxiety. In silence, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A beam of light through a window, the sensation of breathing, the feeling of gravity holding you to earth. Experiences normally ignored as background become foreground, revealing unexpected beauty and significance. This transformation doesn't require changing anything except attention. The brain's novelty-seeking mechanisms turn toward familiar experiences, finding richness in what had become invisible through repetition. Silence refreshes our capacity for genuine attention. Silence can be creative in ways that active thinking can't match. Greatest insights often arrive not during effortful problem-solving, but in quiet moments. Walking, showering, just before sleep. During focus, you gather information. During silence, unconscious processing continues, making distant associations and trying combinations that deliberate thought misses. Many artists and scientists describe their best ideas arriving unbidden during quiet, suggesting that creativity requires both active generation and receptive allowing. Silence teaches patience. Not gritted teeth endurance, but genuine equanimity with present experience. When thoughts race or discomfort arises in silent sitting, you can't fix it by doing. You must simply be with it until it changes on its own. This isn't passive resignation, but active acceptance. Research shows that this patience, cultivated in formal silence practice, generalizes to daily life. People become more tolerant of frustration, better able to wait, less reactive to minor irritations. The silence of nature differs from the silence of empty rooms, carrying particular restorative qualities. Natural soundscapes, even when not silent, containing bird calls, wind, water, benefit the brain differently than mechanical sounds or pure silence. Research shows fastest stress recovery in natural soundscapes. The irregular, fractal patterns of natural sounds apparently resonate with innate brain preferences evolved in natural environments. This explains why nature retreats prove so restorative. They provide the acoustic ecology human brains evolved within. Silence makes death thinkable, not morbid obsession, but healthy acknowledgement of mortality's reality. Activity and noise support the illusion of permanence. Silence removes this protection, allowing recognition that life is finite, each moment unrepeatable, everything impermanent. While initially unsettling, this awareness often deepens appreciation. Knowing time is limited makes each moment more precious. Research shows that appropriately confronting death can enhance life quality, motivating meaningful action and improving present moment awareness. Silence serves as a gateway to presence, being fully in this moment rather than mentally elsewhere. Noise pulls attention to past or future, rarely to the now. Silence, lacking this pull, allows attention to settle in present experience, breathing occurring now, sensations felt now, thoughts arising now. The benefits of presence are substantial reduced anxiety, less depression, enhanced appreciation and relationship quality. The brain, when fully present, functions more efficiently across virtually all domains. The 100th fact brings us full circle to the beginning. Silence isn't absence, but presence. Not empty, but full. Not nothing, but everything that emerges when noise subsides. All the mechanisms we've explored ultimately serve creating conditions where the brain can be what it evolved to be. Silence doesn't add anything. It removes obstacles, allowing inherent capacities to manifest. And in sustained silence, a space opens between awareness and content. You notice thoughts rather than being thoughts. This witnessing awareness, always present but usually obscured, represents your deepest nature, unchanging amid constant change, peaceful amid turmoil, spacious enough to hold all experience. In silence, the brain remembers how to work correctly, and the self remembers how to simply be. And so, our quiet journey through silence comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the active scanning of your auditory cortex in quiet to the discovery that emptiness reveals fullness. Discovering along the way that silence is both science and mystery. From neurons growing in the hippocampus to consciousness recognizing itself, we've glimpsed how silence is both measurable brain state and doorway to the immeasurable. Silence reminds us that the brain heals in stillness, grows in quiet, and discovers its deepest truths when all the noise fades away. Much of the magic happens in unseen silence, deep within neural pathways, in spaces between thoughts. Without silence, the brain never fully rests, integrates, or becomes itself. By pausing to notice, we glimpse the extraordinary in this ordinary quiet moment. And now, in these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about the unity of all minds resting in silence tonight. Yours, mine, everyone listening, all consciousness seeking quiet, perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this thoughtful exploration of silence made you feel less alone, whisper it forward to someone awake tonight. It may bring comfort to one more wandering consciousness, but there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, exploring the science of silence itself. You can allow these thoughts about quiet to fade now, like sound dissolving into distance, leaving only the peaceful stillness behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if silence itself has weight, gently pressing you into rest. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a wave of quiet, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where even thoughts become still. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the gentle darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, silence will still be there, waiting. The brain will still heal in quiet. Neurons will still grow in stillness. But tonight belongs to rest. Rest well, peaceful mind. And remember, silence isn't empty space, but the fullest experience of all, where your truest self emerges when everything else finally stops. Dream deeper with bedtime silence. Good night.